From the loveliest village on the plains, this is the Southeastern Sports Podcast.
Here comes Green. Here's the front of the plate. He is safe. Brings one. Ross swings enough drive to deep left field. That one's gone. That one's gone. Auburn wins.
It's going to be to the goal line. It's going to be gone. It's a touchdown. And the Gators have won the game.
There goes Herschel. There goes Herschel. Desperation play. Flack's going to throw in the end zone. Got a man wide open. You got it. Touchdown Auburn. Touchdown Auburn.
Now with this week's show, here's John Abrams, Riley Hubbard, and Grayson Pierce.
Welcome on in, Southeastern Sports Podcast. It is the middle of August, which means that college football is just around the corner. The first games are beginning on August 29th on that Thursday, so lots to get excited about in the world of college football. But in this week's show, we're going to continue to preview a little bit of the SEC, focusing on Florida, Vanderbilt, Auburn, and Tennessee. So we will get in that just a bit. First, want to introduce who we have in the studio today. We've got Grayson Pierce, John Abrams, Walker Schumacher-Bailey from the last episode. We got a new voice on the end. How's it going? Will Blackman is the new voice that you hear on the end of the table. Good deal. Well, let's go ahead and start today with Florida. So Florida is a team that had a really good year last year under a first-year head coach in Dan Mullen. You know, lots of expectations, but the big question is, can they beat Georgia? Before we get to that, what are y'all's thoughts just on, just on the state of Florida's program? Are they in a position where they're kind of still rebuilding on the offensive side of the ball? Do you think Felipe Franks is a quarterback that can really, give them a 10-win season again?
I think Felipe Franks has been he's been good in his Florida career, but he's also been pretty inconsistent. He definitely has the talent, but I just don't think he's really put it all together in one season yet. But I do think they have a promising program, and if he can really be the leader that this team needs on the field, I think they have.
And going off of that, I think you saw a big progression that Felipe Franks took under Dan Mullen. Under McElwain, was it?
McElwain just...
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different kind of debacle, but I think Dan Mullen is a proven quarterback whisperer, and I think that Felipe Franks has taken a step forward, and I think that'll continue into his redshirt junior year.
And plus, I mean, Florida's always kind of had a good defense, too. And Dan Mullen isn't necessarily a defensive-minded coach, but they've always been good on the defensive side of the ball. So, Will, since you're the new guy, we'll start with you. You think they get to 10 wins this season, and how elite of a quarterback is Felipe Franks in the SEC? Because there's a lot of hype around him, even though he's really not proven.
Yeah, I think Florida, they're my pick to win the East this year. I think they're going to be able to.
That's not all.
And win the East. They're my pick to win the East. I think they got what it takes to beat Georgia. It's a neutral site game, so home advantage not necessarily a big factor in that game. I think they can beat Georgia. With Felipe Franks, I don't think he's necessarily what you'd say an elite quarterback, but I think with this being his second starting year under Mullen, I think he'll make a good progression and be able to lead this Florida team to win the East.
Florida is a good team. I could see them getting 10 wins just because they're in the East and the competition that they're having to play this year. But I don't think I buy Felipe Franks being elite or Florida being elite yet. I think they're moving in the right direction, but I just don't really buy the hype that's surrounding them yet.
One player I do think will take a huge step forward and probably will be elite in his position group is LaMichael Pirine. He's a guy that has been good at Florida in the past, but I think he's poised to take a huge leap forward in this offense next year. I think he'll be one of the top backs in the SEC.
Yeah, and I mean, LaMichael Pirine played a good bit last season. He was a starter, but people all of a sudden are starting to say that he's, number 2 running back in the SEC, maybe number 3. I mean, Pirine and Felipe Franks alone, do you guys think that can make that offense something that can win the East potentially?
I think it can. But it's definitely not a sure thing by any means. But they both have the potential to be really good players. And like I said earlier, if it comes together, Florida, I do think they could win the East. I wouldn't say they're my pick to win it though. And then over to the other side of the ball, I think Florida's defense has a chance to be the best in the East this year. They also got Brenton Cox, a transfer from Georgia. He is unlikely to play this year, but certainly doesn't hurt to have somebody from one of your biggest rivals on your team. And also their offensive line, I would probably say, is the biggest question on offense because you have Franks and Pirine returning. They're only returning 1 out of 5 starters on the offensive line.
Yeah, I don't pick Florida to win the East this year, but I do see them being competitive with Georgia. I think Georgia's going to have a down year this year. It may not show in their record, but I think they're not going to really take a step back, but they'll be on a level playing field with Florida this year, I think. So it should be an interesting race to watch in the East between those two.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everyone expects it to be between Florida and Georgia. I mean, do you guys see anybody else, maybe a South Carolina, even poking their head into that race?
Interestingly enough, I actually see Missouri as a team, a kind of dark horse in the SEC East.
Hot take.
I don't think they'll win it. I don't think they have the talent that either Florida or Georgia does, or even South Carolina. But I think Barry Odom's a good coach, and I think if all the right things fall into place for them, I think they could make a run at the SEC East.
Yeah, I'm kind of riding the South Carolina train this year. It could be a bad look at the end of the season, but I don't think they'll really have a chance to win it. But I think it'll be competitive this year. So, yeah.
Yeah, something similar is Kentucky. A lot of people are discounting Kentucky from like all the seniors they lost, but I think that this Kentucky team has the chance to rally and to me fight for that third place in the SEC East.
So what you're saying is they could be the Hickory High School 2019 football season. They lost their best player. But they could still, compete.
Where is that even from?
Obviously, the difference would be that
High School Musical.
Jimmy, who's not High School Musical. It's from the movie Hoosiers. Jimmy, whose last name escapes me. Obviously, he returns to the team later. Benny Snell is not going to be returning to Kentucky.
You mean Kenny?
But nonetheless, go watch it. And Mark Stoops is Gene Hoffman. Can't remember what his character's name is, but. It works.
I'm totally lost. I have no idea what y'all are talking about.
That movie is a classic. I can't believe you don't know what I'm talking about. Jimmy Chitwood. That's
like the movie 28, right? Isn't that what it is? 28 Days.
Don't even act like you know what I'm talking about, Sean.
All right. Well, any other final points on Florida and what you guys might expect from the season from Florida? I mean. Final prediction, how many wins? Over, under is at 9.5. Do you go over or under? And do they win the East? Most people are saying no because of Georgia, but do they win the East?
I'm gonna go just under at 9, and I think they come in second in the East. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did better than that.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Florida 10 wins this season. I think they can do it.
I think Florida will come second in the East behind Georgia, but I think they definitely have a chance to take the number 1 spot in the East. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
But where are they on the over-under scale? 9.5?
I'll take the under.
Okay.
I'll take the under as well at 9. I have them second in the East, but I have Missouri as a close third, but just having Florida as one of their losses.
Okay, fair enough. So a little bit of optimism, but nobody picking them to win the East. I mean, I'll agree. I think – say that again.
William Blackman, he picked them to win the East.
You heard it here first. Will Blackman on his first show making the hot take. Anyway, a lot of optimism around Florida this season as Dan Mullen goes into his second. I would say, personally, I'm going to take the over. I think they get exactly 10. But they don't win the East because Georgia's just having that good of a season. Anyway, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit of Vandy football. You're listening to the Southeastern Sports Podcast.
We're talking about the best region of sports in the country. This is the Southeastern Sports Podcast.
SESP rolling right along. We are in the middle of August. We just got done talking about Florida. Let's hop around to another East team. Usually when someone asks you to name all of the teams in the SEC, Vanderbilt is one of the last ones that you think of because you kind of forget about them. To be honest, they're kind of one of the worst teams football-wise, but they're the best team baseball-wise, so that has to count for something, right?
And they're the best team school-wise.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I mean, you got to give Auburn a little bit of credit there.
A close second or third, I think. Auburn's coming in at.
Fair enough.
Our academic power rankings will be coming out later in the season. But moving on to Vanderbilt, what do you guys have Vanderbilt doing this season?
Personally, I see Vandy as kind of being typical Vandy. I'm always optimistic they'll be okay, but the thing is they've got, and I know Walker's a big fan of them too, but Keyshawn Vaughn, man, great player, awesome player. And I'm not saying that, he's going to get them 10 wins or whatever. I think they'll be, hanging around bowl eligibility. So put them at 7 wins is kind of what I see them doing. With their schedule, it's not terrible, but at the same time, they've got some tough opponents from the West as well. So I would say 7 wins kind of the ceiling. Keyshawn Vaughn is big that he's coming back. And also, Tim Horton is now the running backs coach at Vandy. I think that's going to help out a lot because he is an incredible running back coach, very proven at Auburn as well. I think they will do well playing together. And to be honest, I think that Vandy has a little bit of a chip on its shoulder. I mean, I personally heard Keyshawn Vaughn at Media Days say, hey, people always count us all out just because we're Vanderbilt. People always forget about us. So that has to help a little bit as well. But like I said, probably a 7-win year. Where do you guys think, Vandy, being Vandy, do you think they're bowl eligible, or do you think it's a deal where they're going to be a lot better than people think, or do you think Derek Mason finally gets fired and Vandy says, we've given you enough chances? Because he's been there. This will be his 6th season at Vandy.
Yeah, I have no expectations for Vandy this year. I give them 5 wins at the most.
That's
and
fair.
That'd be upsetting one of the other Eastern teams. Honestly, I find it very hard Mason sticks around for another year if they don't make a bowl game this year. I mean, like you said, they got a good running back, but, I mean, can the rest of the players on the team step up and help them out?
Defense still has to be there.
Yeah, they have a quarterback battle going on right now, and if that quarterback doesn't play well, then I think Vandy's going to be in a world of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Vandy can have a pretty good offense, obviously with Keyshawn Vaughn, like we've said. Jared Pinkney, the tight end, could have been an NFL pick. Could be an NFL pick, excuse me.
I think he will.
They do need to replace Kyle Shermer at quarterback. They have Riley Neal, who's a senior graduate transfer, and then Deuce Wallace, who's a redshirt junior. They need to – I think if they can get a good quarterback, they can have a decent season, at least by their standards. I have them at 6 wins. I think Derek Mason stays just because Vandy is not a program where you have like an Auburn, Georgia, LSU.
The expectations.
Alabama, the expectations are, bowl eligibility is a good season. And I think he gets them to a bowl game this season.
I agree. I think that he sticks around.
I think the ceiling for Vanderbilt this year would be about 5 wins. I see them getting 3.
Ouch.
Yeah. I mean, they're teams from the West. They're playing LSU and Mississippi or Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a good draw, but LSU is just gonna run all over them, I think.
3 wins?
Yeah, they're not gonna win a conference game, and they will lose to Purdue, I think.
I agree.
Is that the opener?
No, Georgia's their opener.
Okay.
Tough opener, but yeah. So I think I could still see Derek Mason staying next year. Just who do y'all think they'd get if they fire him? I don't know where. I mean, of course, Vanderbilt is a place where they could try out unproven coaches. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
And I don't think you're going to get a proven coach that wants to come to Vanderbilt. So that's basically their only option.
Yeah. Who do you think they'd go for, though? Any names?
I do not have any names. Probably just a coordinator.
Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
I'd say someone Chad Morris-esque, a type of up-and-coming young coach who's maybe had 2 years or so of head coaching experience.
But in the division?
No, not
In conference, excuse me. Okay.
Or the conference. But I have Vanderbilt at around 5-7. I think their ceiling's probably. I don't see them going to a bowl game, but I do see them pulling off an upset of 1 or 2 SEC teams this year. I just don't think it's a very good roster, top to bottom. I think playing Georgia is no easy task in the first game especially, but I think they're going to get worked in that game, and it's going to be just a bad start to the season. You never want to go into a game where
Georgia, that's a tough draw.
it is.
And I think Vanderbilt's getting more talent. It's just that when you're playing in the SEC, you're not going to be able to see that. Put them in the ACC or Big Ten. I think they're a middle of the pack team, but it just doesn't work like that in the SEC.
And I know that this conversation has been tossed around in the past, not recently, but in the past. They would be more competitive if they went to Conference USA or something like that. At this point, they get the SEC money, so they're willing to just not be good at football, I think.
And baseball's their thing,
Right.
I mean,
same with Mississippi State.
yeah, exactly.
So, I don't see them leaving the conference anytime soon. And like you said, with baseball there, it makes plenty of sense for them to stay in
I don't
conference.
think the SEC would let that happen because, like we mentioned, academically, they're just so strong. I don't see the SEC letting that happen.
Big time.
And I know we've been pretty pessimistic about Vanderbilt football today, but I think a bright spot for them, and y'all have already mentioned his name, is Keyshawn Vaughn. Riley, you mentioned his relationship with Tim Horton, and I think that's going to be huge coming in the season. I think he's a guy that could be a second or third round pick in the NFL draft.
That's a home run hire, by the way.
Oh, definitely. And I think that's going to be a bright spot for them.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, to kind of round out the segment, I guess, for Vandy, you guys all kind of gave your thoughts on, will they be bowl eligible? How many wins will they give? Will Derek Mason still have his job? We'll finish it like this. Over, under wins at 5.5. Do you think, 4.5. Do you think they get over that? And how many of those wins are conference wins? Because a lot of times they win all their non-conference games and they win like 1 or 2 conference games. Personally, I think they can get 3 conference wins. And in the East, I think they can get conference wins. They won't win either of the West games, though.
I'll take the over, not by a ton though. I say they win at least 3 out of their 4 out-of-conference games, and 2 to 3 conference games.
Okay.
But no more than 6 games.
John?
I'm taking the under, and they will win 0 conference games.
You're just being harsh, man.
I mean,
being really harsh.
If I had to pick, I could also see them maybe upsetting Missouri and Tennessee.
Okay.
But I just...
John is a Vandy hater. What can you say? All right, Will, what you got?
I'd go with them getting 4 wins this year, but if I had to choose a game that they'd upset, I think it'd be Missouri. They just get them at home, and just depending on, you always got, the potential of, certain...
You don't see any other conference game them winning?
Ole Miss. No, just because Ole Miss is at home. I'm just looking at home advantage. The teams that they do have at home, like Georgia and LSU, they gotta go on the road to Florida. So if they knock off any conference opponent, I think it's going to be Missouri at home.
Walker?
I've got Vanderbilt at 5-7, so I'll take the over. I see them upsetting Ole Miss and Tennessee, actually. I know they have to go to Neyland Stadium. However, I think Mason will outcoach Jeremy Pruitt in that game, and I think they'll win by a field goal.
Yeah, Tennessee is still a team that's kind of down. Now, they might have, been kind of on the way up, especially after the Auburn win, but that's still that's still a program kind of down in the dumps, very beatable, and it happened last season at Vandy. So, that's all we got for Vanderbilt. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Tennessee. Keep it right here, Southeastern Sports Podcast.
Now more of the Southeastern Sports Podcast with John, Riley, and Grayson.
We're back on the Southeastern Sports Podcast here with Will, Blackman, Grayson, Walker, and John. We've already discussed a little bit of Vandy and Florida from the East. We're going to stay in the East and talk about another program that's kind of been down in the dumps, but a lot of people are optimistic about Jeremy Pruitt's chances. A lot of people think that they're going to stay right where they are. With Jeremy Pruitt, I feel like that's a coach where you either think it's going to work, he's big time, he's a great coach, great fit, or you think he's an absolute nightmare. We'll go ahead and start, each one of you. Where do you stand on the Jeremy Pruitt hire? Do you think he's somebody who can take him out of it or not? I think personally he can do it because he's a good defensive-minded coach, but it's going to take another 4 or 5 years to, get to decency, really.
Yeah, I think he's going on the right. He's getting Tennessee on the right path. I think his biggest thing is him, offensive coordinator with his team and having offensive coordinator that can recruit well. Because like we said, he's a very defensive-minded coach. He was a defensive coordinator at Alabama and built really good defenses with Alabama. It's just going to be that he's like Gus Malzahn is with Auburn. He's got to hire a good defensive coordinator, and Pruitt needs to hire a good offensive coordinator.
Fair enough. I mean, the defense was pretty good last year. That was not really that was not really Tennessee's problem. I mean, it was just the lackluster offense last season. And I think that, he's not going to shy away with that. Grayson, what do you think about Pruitt?
I think Pruitt's a good coach for Tennessee, and like you said, they have a strong defense. I think offensively they could have a better year. They have Callaway returning at receiver, and obviously Jarrett, and I'm probably going to mess this up, Garantano coming back at quarterback.
Garantano.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, whatever. He's shown flashes in the past 2 years, and I think he'll be a good quarterback for him this year. And I have Tennessee at 6 wins, but I could see him, getting to 7 or probably not 8. But I could see a 7-win season for Tennessee and then being pretty content with that.
And that would be a good season probably for Tennessee, I think. Texas Ranger, what you got?
So this might make a lot of Vols fans mad, and this is not a personal dig against Tennessee.
Trigger warning.
I'm fine with the Vols, but I don't think Jeremy Pruitt's a very good hire. I think he's good on paper. I think it's a name that looks good because he obviously led a couple of elite Bama defenses. I don't think he's a player's coach. I think he's a definite X's and O's guy. So maybe he'll work out. I can't say that, but I think next season I actually have Tennessee with just 3 wins, no wins in conference.
John?
I think Tennessee will get about 6 wins this year. About Jeremy Pruitt and his future at Tennessee, I think eventually, if Tennessee fans are patient with him, he could make them better, competitive for the East, that is. But they're going to have to go through a lot of mediocre seasons and even some really bad seasons, I think. It's just going to take time. And, in the past, they've been fine with mediocrity, so I guess if they're patient enough this time, then they could be good at some point.
Yeah, and I mean, they've gone through a cycle with Derek Dooley and Butch Jones, and I think that we can both agree that while both of those guys weren't disastrous, they're not terrible coaches, they're just not fit to be head coaches. Will, what else did you want to add?
Well, I was just going to ask Walker, did you say they're going to win 3 games this year or next year?
This year.
Wait, so do you have them losing to BYU or UAB?
BYU.
BYU.
I think the schedule looks good on paper for Tennessee, and this is a completely bold take. I think they will probably be closer to 6 or 7 wins.
Hot takes.
But
yeah,
this is something that I think could happen, and I think it's more likely than people think. So this is a nightmare case scenario for Tennessee. So I'm not saying that they have the talent level to win 6 or 7 games or even more, but this is what I think could happen.
How much would you be willing to bet that they will get 3 wins this season?
I'm not a betting man, but if I had to bet, probably $6 billion.
Dang. That's a confident man.
No, that's just pocket change for me, really. So.
I mean, no, but you guys don't know how much we paid to be on this podcast.
I just want to give a quick shout out to a man who probably made just as much money from the University of Tennessee, maybe not quite, champion of life, Butch Jones, and his revolutionary idea of no sweat Thursday practices. Every successful college program from Alabama to USC, to the U in the 80s, I know without a doubt they only had 3 days of practice per week. That's how you build a contender in the SEC. It's just he belongs in the Hall of Fame. He's too good for Tennessee.
And, I mean, think about all of the champions of life that were on those teams.
I mean, Alabama, they might have their rings, but their materialism will never come close to Butch's life lessons, the impact they had on that school in Knoxville.
I think we're just going to end it right there. I mean, anybody else have any last minute thoughts about Tennessee?
I just want to give a shout out to Butch Jones. If you're listening, love you, man.
All right, then. The chances of Butch Jones is listening to this is probably next to 0.
1 in 6 billion, maybe.
I'll get this message.
All right. Well, with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and get to our final segment of the afternoon. Can't believe this podcast is really flown by. We're going to be talking about Auburn, specifically Auburn's defense that is really kind of the forefront of the team. We'll preview Auburn next, and it's actually the final team of the SEC previews. So, got to make it a good one, guys. We got to finish on a high note. Listen to the Southeastern Sports Podcast.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SE Sports Podcast. Now, here's more of the show.
Welcome back in. Final segment of this week's Southeastern Sports Podcast. As Dan mentioned right there, you do need to go follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at SE Sports Podcast. Who knows? A fight might even break out in the comments. You don't want to miss stuff like that. It's good content. Anyway, final segment today, we're going to be talking about the Auburn Tigers, the final team that we will be previewing. A lot of you guys in the predicted SEC finish had Auburn, we're kind of high on Auburn, even though they had a so-so kind of average year last year, third in the West. So what is it about Auburn that you guys are optimistic about? Is it the defensive line and people like Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown coming back, or is it something about new quarterbacks, Joey Gatewood / Bo Nix, whoever wins that contest? I mean, what is it that you guys are so excited about? And we'll start with you, Will.
The hype for Auburn is definitely going to come from the defensive end. If history has proven anything with getting hype about quarterbacks like Jeremy Johnson, it usually doesn't turn out well. So I'd say the reason why we're also hyped around Auburn would be their defense and not necessarily their offense. Though I would say their offense has potential with quarterbacks like Joey Gatewood and Bo Nix.
John?
Yeah, it's definitely the defense. I mean, this might be the strongest defense that Auburn's had in a long time, maybe ever. And I think that this team that Auburn has, I know Will's going to get mad at me for saying this, but I think it's the most talent that Auburn's had on one team in a long time.
The 2004 team, I think, is the best Auburn team ever, past 10 and 13.
Yeah, I saw that coming, but yeah, I just think Auburn's defense, you know what you're getting, and they're going to punch you in the mouth whenever you try to run the ball on them. And our secondary is really awesome this year. So
I'm getting off topic a little bit, but Will, are you saying that the 04 team is better than the 2010 team as well? I mean, I know the receiving core was stacked, great defensive line, great secondary, but I mean,
the 04 team was snubbed from the national championship.
Oh
game.
yeah, 100%. I think they would have lost to USC, but 100%.
I don't know. I don't know. We could have beaten USC. It would have been a very close game. It would have been a much better game than what they had to play.
Yeah, Oklahoma sucked.
But, I mean, the running back combination with Ronnie Brown and Cadillac Williams, I think, would have really changed the pace of the 2010s defense. And while Cam Newton was the better quarterback than Jason Campbell, the wide receivers and just Jason Campbell's – I mean, if you just watch this 2004 year, I think the 2004 team was complete. Their secondary was also really good. You had Carlos Rogers and Junior Rosegreen. Junior Rosegreen was a
hardest hit of all time.
Oh, yeah. And I just think that their defense would have been able to make more stops on a 2010 team if they went head-to-head.
Anyway, sorry to get off topic a little bit.
And I'm not going to compare this team to the 2004 team, but I do think they have the chance to be a pretty complete team based on how the offense comes together. Obviously, a lot of hype around the defense, especially the defensive line, and with good reason. You have Derek Brown, Marlon Davidson, and Nick Coe returning. All will be NFL draft picks this next spring. You do have to replace Deshaun Davis and Darrell Williams, two longtime starters at linebacker. But you have KJ Britt, 2-year backup, who's really impressed. Chandler Wooten, who's supposed to be pretty good, as well as Kobe McLean, and 5-star incoming freshman Owen Popo, who has been raved about by teammates during practice. You know what? You can shove it, John. Okay?
That wasn't me.
John.
Last thing, secondary. I think the secondary is really underrated, and I think they will be maybe the strong point of the defense with so many teams focusing on our defensive line.
Apparently, I sound like John.
Yeah, this linebacker core I think is really underrated, just mostly based off the fact that, like, there's no returning starters. But, like, with KJ Britt and Papo and McLean and Wooten, I really think that this linebacker core is really strong, if not stronger than potentially last year. And I know that's pretty bold, but
Isn't the word. I think it's just unproven. And I think they can be a really good linebacking core, but it's just no one really knows. I agree that they're going to be really good this year and probably surprise a lot of people around the nation.
Derek Brown and Marlon Davidson, though, I mean, having both of those guys back, that's just so huge. And I love both of those guys, too.
Yeah,
can't forget Nick Coe either.
I think just the depth that the defense has is really something that's going to be great for Auburn this year. Just being able to fill guys' shoes if they go down, whatever that may mean.
And I'd like to retract a statement I made earlier. I wouldn't say the secondary is the strong point of the defense. Obviously, that would be the defense line. But I think they might impress the most people compared to expectations. And
You're talking about depth.
at safety, you have obviously Jeremiah Denson and Daniel Thomas, two very experienced players coming back, very good at stopping the run. And then behind them, you have sophomores Smoke Monday and Jamie and Sherwood, who also were really impressive last year. So I think this Auburn defense has a chance to be really good for a while.
Walker, what excites you the most about this team? Is it defensive line or is it something different?
What excites me the most is just what y'all have been saying is the completeness of this team. So I've been following Auburn football seriously for about 10 years now. It would be 10 years since the 2009 season. And I can't remember a team from top to bottom that was this complete. I think talent level.
A lot of depth.
2004.
Well, I didn't watch 2004 season. But
2009 to 2019, who's the best team? 2004.
But I'm really excited just to see if this team can gel, because I think they've got leaders. It looks like they've got chemistry, and they've obviously got the talent. And a lot of these players are proven. You've got some unproven guys, but so I think they have the pieces, and I'm interested to see if it'll all come together on the field.
Well, just to kind of wrap up this Auburn segment, a couple of things I want from you guys. Who do you believe wins the quarterback race? Because, pretty much everyone thought Gatewood out to start. But, I mean, from the first few days of practice, it looks like Nix looks a little bit better. Still no announcement yet. And also, over-under 10 wins for Auburn this season. And are either of those Georgia and Bama? I know it's a lot of questions, but I'll go ahead and start. I would like to see Bo Nix start. Now, I still think Gatewood wins it just because he's been in the system for a year, but I would really like to see Bo Nix start. Auburn's going to be I hate to say 9. I'm going to go 8. I think Auburn is an 8-win team with a good potential to get 9. It's going to be tough to beat. I don't think they beat Georgia or Bama, and they'll probably drop LSU as well. So, yeah, I'll give them 9. But it's going to be an above-average year. They're an above-average team, but they're still going to finish third in the West, I think. And, John, we'll start with you. Go ahead and make fun of me if you want.
I think 10 is kind of a weird number to, draw the line at. Auburn's predicted to get like 7 or 8 around the nation, it seems. But for 10 wins, I'm going to take the under, I think, as much as that hurts me to say. If you can't tell my bias right here.
Physically recoiling right now.
But I think Joey will get the starting job, but I don't think the starter is where it ends right there. I think Auburn's going to be seeing who works at quarterback. I think both of them will play in the Oregon game, and I think they've got 2 games in Tulane and Kent State where they can still try some things out and see what works best. But yeah, I'm going to take Joey to get the start.
Walker?
All right, so obviously I'm an Auburn fan. I think I've made that pretty clear over the episodes that I've done.
Not hiding your bias.
But here we go. So I have Auburn predicted at 12-0, and let me extend that to the playoffs and make it 15-0.
Whoa. Is this like just being optimistic, or do you really think Auburn wins the national championship?
That is being optimistic, but I definitely think Auburn. I think it's between 11-1 and 12-0 for the regular season.
Oh my gosh! So they're gonna beat Georgia or Bama or both.
I think both, and maybe lose to LSU. That's what I'm thinking.
Wow.
Got to give Auburn at least Georgia or Bama. I don't see them playing at home getting beat by both of them.
Especially with both being at home, I think they have a really good chance to win at least one of those games.
No, but here's the thing. Obviously, I think this team has the potential to go 12-0, and I don't think a lot of teams in the country can say that. But I think if we have injuries, if there is some dissent with the quarterback race between players wanting Nix or Gatewood, I think all these type of things could be factors in making this team maybe an 8 or 9 win team, maybe even 7. So I think there's a lot of factors that could go into bringing this team more to what people around the nation think Auburn is going to be. But being close to the program and kind of following the team closely, I think they have a ceiling of 12-0, and that's my honest opinion.
And in last season, I think where it really fell apart was in the locker room. There was no sense of direction. Stidham did not lead the locker room like he probably should have. But I feel like this year the team's got a lot better direction from the quarterbacks and from the defensive line, who's really just the rock on that team, I think.
I'm a Stidham fan, I'll be honest, but I mean, can't complain with you there. If you think that's where it went wrong, then
I want him to do well, and I think he was a good quarterback. It's just he didn't seem to really lead the team like he should have, but I'll leave it at that.
Grayson?
At this point, I could see Gatewood or Nix winning the quarterback job. Obviously, Gatewood is more of a power runner, so he has that advantage. Nix is a little bit faster, so we probably have the advantage there. I'd say they're probably close to equal in passing. Ultimately, I think if it's even, you have to go with Gatewood just because, Nix isn't going to transfer as a true freshman, I don't think, especially being an Auburn legacy. But you have to think if Nix is named the starter, Gatewood would seriously consider transferring. Sure. And then you have the one and only Cord Sandberg, God bless you if you're listening, as the backup quarterback.
He is not listening.
That's just not good. Well, on the chance that he might be. But also I want to predict Liberty to win the national championship this year, 12-0, with the Malik Willis leading the way at quarterback. I think he's sitting out this year, but that's irrelevant. They're winning it all.
It's just his presence.
You guys are such big Malikers. It's unreal.
Malik, if you're listening, have my kids. I'll have your kids. But back to Auburn, as far as the over-under, I have them right at 10 wins. If I have to pick the over-under, I really want to go over on this. But I see us losing at least 2 games to either LSU or Georgia or Bama. I think I'm going to have to go under at 9-3.
I hate that I'm being so pessimistic about Auburn. I was the only one that said that they're going to lose Georgia, Bama, LSU, and maybe even A&M. But anyway, Will, go ahead.
Yeah, as a smart betting man, I would definitely go with the under on 10 wins. I mean,
very humble also.
I mean, I think 8 or 9 wins with a true freshman or redshirt freshman quarterback would be a good start to going into next year. And I'd put more, I'd say, if going into next year, if Auburn can get to 8 to 9 wins, I'd definitely go with an over for next year. but being a smart betting man, I'd go under. But being a diehard Auburn fan, I'm going to go over.
Fair enough. Well,
I have to say about the record and Gus Malzahn's position as head coach. People are saying that Malzahn's on the hot seat this year, but if I'm Auburn and Malzahn gets you to 8 wins, I don't see how you can fire him.
Yeah. Auburn, if you're an Auburn fan and you get to 8 wins this year with a freshman, especially if Bo Nix starts as a true freshman, I think you got to be happy with 8 wins. It's
agreed.
Pending splitting the Georgia-Bama game, I feel like he needs to win one of those games and finish with 8 or above to really I wouldn't say necessarily cool the hot seat, but to get he's getting one more year per se, and I think more pressure is going to be on him next year.
A postponement of execution, one might say, if you were to compare it to the criminal justice system, but you probably won't. So, also another team we forgot to mention as far as Auburn's schedule, Florida. Could be a potential, I don't know if you'd call it an upset, because I think Florida might actually be projected to do better than Auburn. But I think that could definitely be a game that Auburn slips up in.
And it's in the swamp.
I know Will has a prediction about that.
Yeah, so I'm still going to say Florida is my team to win the East, but I could also see Florida beating Georgia this year, but dropping their 2 games to Auburn and LSU, and those being there's only 2 losses, but Georgia's only loss being to Florida, beating Auburn, and still making the SEC championship game. I could very easily see that happening as well. I still think Florida is going to win the East. That's my number 1 prediction, but my number 2 prediction would be Florida losing its 2 Western opponents, beating Georgia, but Georgia's only loss being Florida.
How about this? Georgia loses to Auburn and Florida, but since they beat Florida, they are number 1 in the East. Wait, are you saying Florida's going to beat Georgia, right?
Yeah, Florida's going to beat Georgia, but lose their 2 Western teams. But Georgia's only loss would be to Florida, but Georgia's conference record is going to be better, which will get them into the championship game.
Okay, yeah.
One more thing. Thoughts on Auburn's not new, but tweaked logo, new visual identity.
Since there's so much to say about this, I'm going to say, we're going to go around. You're going to say like or dislike. And I have a hard feeling you can say dislike because, and then a couple words. Because I'll go ahead. It looks bad. It looks really bad. And a lot of people are saying, oh, well, if nobody would have told you, you could have barely noticed. Man, there's just no reason. Why would Tennessee change the T? Why would Florida change the Gator logo? I just don't get it. I just don't get it. It would bother me a lot if Auburn were to change that, especially a program with as much tradition. Will, I'll start with you.
We honestly don't need to go around. We all dislike it, and as all Auburn students, we think it's a waste of resources for the university, and they can do things better with that money.
Dislike. But so for Auburn to think that this is a good use of money is absolutely insane. I mean, Auburn, like we mentioned in a previous podcast, Auburn is behind on facilities among teams in the SEC.
This is totally killing the rule that I just put in state.
What?
I'm just kidding. Just go ahead.
I mean, it's just a waste of money. If you're going to use that money, put it towards if you want to elevate Auburn's brand, put it towards facilities or put it towards research. The 2 things that Auburn, needs, and research being what Auburn is known for and what they do best. So, I mean, just to use it on a logo makes absolutely no sense. A logo that was perfectly fine to begin with.
Walker.
Dislike. That's all I'm going to say.
Grayson.
Alan Green, if you're listening, 1, don't change the logo. 2, don't take this personally. Please let me stay in school. Rough times right now, so bless up.
Okay, then. Well, with that, all of the SEC teams are completed. Can I get a woo? Fair enough. Okay. All the SEC teams are completed in a preview of the Southeastern Sports Podcast. That means next week we will begin going ahead and previewing some of the matchups. That's right. August 29th is when it will begin. College football beginning on Thursday. Remember, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram for the latest updates. Until next time, have a good night.
This has been the Southeastern Sports Podcast with John Abrams, Riley Hubbard, and Grayson Pierce. Be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. For more coverage of Southeastern sports, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SE Sports Podcast.